today. Everyone is trying to recruit you, and I'm here to convince you you should go to these research labs and or stay in academia, because startups is just definitely not going to be as safe. So I'm a roboticist turned into an entrepreneur many years ago. And today I'll give you a very high level sort of set of stories to share experiences with you about the experiences of starting a startup company, especially in robotics. And here my focus is primarily going to be around consumer robotics, which has interesting challenges, which I think many of you can appreciate. So imagine all of the talks today cover various topics in robotics that you need to solve, such as indoor mapping, navigation, obstacle detection, human-robot interaction, natural language understanding, and so on. And then now imagine solving any of those problems for a bill of material cost of hardware that's going to be less than $5. And then on top of that, just to make the task even more interesting, is imagine then building not one robot that you have to show a demo to your program sponsor or your professor that works in the lab, but imagine shipping millions of robots to homes you have never visited or seen. With a user that's not an expert like you are, they're going to take the box, rip it apart, throw the manual in the trash can, take the robot out, press a button, and expect it to work immediately. Otherwise, we're going to get it back. And this is a robot that maybe costs a few $100s that they paid for, and in the middle of this, everyone has to make money. So that frames the challenge from a technical perspective of building robots for the home. So I'll cover a little bit of the story, but the first thing is you've got to be prepared. Many people come to me and ask me about, oh, I have this great idea, why don't we do it together? And I say, okay, great, let's spend 10 minutes talking about what it takes. And by the time I've gone through half of the story of what you need to learn to do to get a successful business from an idea to a business, they usually end up with a blank look in their face. And then usually 99% of people never call me back again. But it's a good test, right? And then you need to know what you're getting into, right? You're going to have to work with people. You have to raise money. You have to work with investors. And there's interesting lessons that you should learn through people that have done it before rather than trying to experience on your own. And one of the other things is that the whole reason for existence of startups, what is it? We have companies like Google and Amazon and you name it, right? Samsung and Sony and all these companies that have unlimited, virtually unlimited amount of resources. And they're trying to do unbelievable things. Why would we think as a startup that we can go and do something that they can't, right? So at iRobot, where I ran technology and product development, I used to manage a budget of $80 million a year. And I left to start a new company, by the way, together with Maya. So why did I do that? Why do I think that we can compete with a company like that, and then we have companies that are orders of magnitude bigger than that? Well, it's because we can move faster, and if you don't, you won't survive. You have to be able to learn really quickly with very limited resources and be sharply focused to get there, right? So learning is a big part of this. And by the way, a lot of the learnings are going to be exactly what you have not been taught in school. So if you like that kind of environment, actually it can be a lot of fun. And being part of startup is really like a roller coaster ride. And if you like learning, working in an uncertain environment with limited budget, but you love sort of challenging the status quo, it's for you. If you want a safe job, you already heard the pitch. So there are many things involved in taking an idea to the market, right? There are many different skill sets that you will have to learn. At least learning enough to hire the right people and know that these people are actually doing what they're supposed to, rather than a year into it figuring out this was not the right person. So at least you need to know enough to be able to manage it. In my experience, a lot of the skills we don't get trained on in engineering or scientific sort of fields has to do with how you interact with people, how you manage people, how you inspire people, how you negotiate. And these are skills we don't learn. So one of the things I would encourage people that are interested in pursuing anything entrepreneurial is try to expose yourself. If you thought robotics is multidisciplinary, do robotic startups, and then you can see the disciplines actually go way, way beyond where you expected. And the other thing I learned in a startup is at Evolution Robotics, our previous company that Mario may have covered it today. I wasn't here, unfortunately, in the morning. One of the things we did is we said, you know what, we need to have navigation systems. It is, by the way, 2001, right? So the first thing the robot needs to do is has to go from point A to point B. State of the art back then was Sebastian Transwork from CMU using $10,000-$20,000 sensor and our $10,000-$20,000 in computation and could navigate a corridor. And we said we were going to do it with a camera because cameras are cheap, and we actually did. Within a year, we had a MATLAB implementation that was doing SLAM using a single camera and odometer. We were so proud, we said, okay, let's take this and go to the bank and cash it in. We learned that that is just one sliver. And this is, by the way, technology that was a few orders of magnitude better than the state of the art, right? And we said, okay, we're done. And then we learned, no, that's just the beginning. That's maybe at best 5% of the solution. Because you have to take it all the way down here, right? You have to really embed that into a solution that you can plug into a hardware in a way that can be manufactured in mass, not the unit you build in the lab where you have all the expertise and hands that could help with tweaking and fixing it. So you really have to build a solution, and then what do you do with this technology? Okay, we know navigation is hard, especially in 2001. But what are you going to do with it next? Well, it has to be providing a benefit to an end user. The end user doesn't care about SLAM and VSLAM, these kind of things. They say, okay, what does it do for me? Well, it can help your robot navigate from point A to point B, and it can do kidnapping and recover from kidnapping and so on. Okay, well, what does it do for me? Well, you have to build a product, and then once you build a product and make it work and all these things, then you have to figure out to do manufacturing. And manufacturing usually happens in the Far East. Even though we want to deploy robots in the US to bring manufacturing back, I don't think we have the infrastructure to do so. So it happens in the Far East, probably in the foreseeable future as well. And now you have to fly over there, and people that work in these factories, no matter what region of the world is, they are unskilled labor. At best, they may have a high school degree. Now you want them to build robots that are going to work. A lot of the sensors and so on that you're using in these systems need calibration, so how do you do that, right? So there's a lot that goes into doing that. And then you realize, okay, now we built 1,000 units, that was great. Let's say you have about 1,000 components per robot, right? And now you want to build 100,000 units. How many components do you have to channel to the right place at the right time with the right quality to make sure that your robots actually are working? So now you realize, oh, we may need to have someone manage our logistics. And so on, right? So you can see this going on. So this was one of the factories that both Mario and I have spent a lot of time at where we were manufacturing our first robots. And you have an army of people, right? There's no shortage of people that can throw at the problem. You just have to make it extremely simple to figure out and have test and calibration features that automatically detect if anything was not assembled properly or not within the tolerances you want on these things. And I remember they had a big logo that was the slogan of the company, which was called "No pain, no gain." No pain, no gain. And that was our motto too. We used to spend a lot of time doing that. And as I mentioned, logistics becomes a massive undertaking. And these are things you have to learn to do, right? One of the ultimate things is that now, okay, let's say we build this robot and we want to sell it to people. How much are they willing to pay for it? So getting this ratio is where a lot of startups have failed in robotics, is finding the right ratio between the value you're adding to the end user versus the cost for what you ask for it, right? And just to give you a rule of thumb, it's an important one to know, especially for consumer robotics. For every dollar you spend in building the robot, it translates to about $5 in cost to the end user, right? So if you're building a navigation system for $100, right, it costs $500 just to have a navigation system that doesn't really do anything for the end user. Now, if you want to put it in a robot, there's probably another couple of $100 in there. So all of a sudden you have a robot that's $2,000 and no one wants to buy it. So really your navigation system should be $10 at best if you're being generous, right? So finding that equation is extremely important. Now, before you get to do any of this, someone has to have enough faith in you to say, you know what, I'm going to write a small check and give it to you so you can hire people, get an office maybe, or work out of your garage, buy a scope, a couple of computers, licensing for email accounts at Google, and so on. So you've got to work with investors. And you have to be very careful what kind of investors. This is probably the most important advice I can give is, by the way, there's tons of money out there, right? If you guys have heard about Sand Hill Road, just go drive down Sand Hill Road several miles and there's one VC firm after the other. Everyone represents at least $500 million of money under management. So there's a lot of money, but there's also a lot of competition, right? For every 1,000 presentations that these people get, they invest in one. So you can see, if you thought it was hard to get to USC, now think about getting VC money. But the other thing is, this is almost like marriage. So be careful who you take money from. My advice would be, if you do not feel comfortable with these people, you may have to take their money, but know what you're getting into, right? It's very important. Another thing I'll share with you, by the way, the whole market or environment around investments in robotics has changed like crazy. Back at Evolution, I had to knock on maybe 10 or 20 doors before one would even talk to me, and out of the ones that talked to me, maybe 1 out of 100 would want to invest in Evolution Robotics. Now, it's different. There's a lot more money flowing into robotics, for better or for worse. There's also a lot of people that are following the trend, so people that are not roboticists, that are jumping there saying, I'm going to be a robotics, machine learning, AI, CNN, deep learning company, using all the buzzwords, right? So there are some companies that are getting funding that potentially could damage the reputation of robotics, but they're also good for those that know what they're doing, right? So the market has changed. But there's a couple of things. Hardware startups are not as attractive as software startups. For all the reasons of the complexity of the operations I just talked about, right? You have to ship, you have to build product, you have to ship it, you have to have a channel, which usually means retail channels. Retail channel will take 50% of the profit margin, right? If you're selling a product for $200 in retail, the retail channel is buying it from you for $100. Right? They already made their $100, now you have to scramble to make your money out of that. So there's all this, the financing of the logistics, the reverse logistics and all these things makes businesses with hardware not as attractive as software, which can scale much faster. There's no logistics involved, not much logistics. You put it on App Store and that's basically it, right, for instance. So one thing to consider very carefully, if you're familiar with Dropcam or similar companies, is a business model that says the hardware is just a surrogate to getting recurring revenues, which means subscription or something like that, usually tied to a data or a service. Dropcam, which is a in-home wireless connected camera. They have a beautiful business model. You said you buy the camera for about $149 to $199, but you have subscription fees for storing your data in the cloud. Whether it's storing for 24 hours or storing for a whole year of data, you can pay higher and higher premiums. So this is very important. If you go just with a hard goods business model, you will see less interest from the VCs. You have to show how to scale the business. Couple of tips. Learning about what is known as lean startup, which has become the de facto standard for not only small companies, but big companies too. Big companies that are not practicing this are the ones that are falling more and more behind, is how you run the operation. So a lot of the things that has to do with why startups would succeed is not so much about what you do, but how you do, how you work together. And this is back to all this, what people may call soft skills that we don't learn. We learn about, here's, give me a problem formulation, I'll tell you exactly how to solve it, give you the requirements and tolerances and so on, I'll show you how it's done, right? And when you're dealing with people, you can't really describe the problem that well. So it's not as much about the IQ, it's about the EQ, right? And building a company and how you go about figuring out a problem is as important, if not more important. Many companies fail, not because they don't have the smartest people, but because they don't have the right mindset and culture about how to go about solving problems. And specifically in startups or any new innovative product or project you're working on, there's a big uncertainty ellipse around what you're trying to figure out. There's a lot of big unknowns. And the unknowns are not only technical unknowns, but there are also unknowns about what is the product going to be, how is the consumer going to respond to this, and so on. So learning what broadly is known as agile philosophy, which allows you to apply it across the entire company, not only for software, but figuring out what is the problem you're solving, how you're solving it, and how quickly you can figure it out and iterate. By the way, for robotics, this should be easy. Basically, it says the uncertainty is so large, I cannot just pre-plan and execute blindly. I'm going to sense, right, learn from that and adjust and keep closing the feedback loop really quickly to reduce the uncertainty in the system. And then another thing I'll say is, unless you partner with a successful entrepreneur, I would encourage you to consider going to one of many accelerator programs, which is a boot camp basically run by successful VCs and entrepreneurs that will give you a quick crash course in a lot of the things that you would need to learn about in order to be successful. You could also seek to find a mentor that has the time and willingness and interest to help you, right? Learning it the hard way is only for a few of us. So, having said that, I think it's safer for you to stick with the other jobs. But if I didn't scare you, Embodied is always looking for great people to hire. Unfortunately, we are a stealth company, so we can't tell you much about what we are doing. But what we are trying to do is going to be revolutionary if we succeed. Thank you very much.